All right. So, dear students, thank you very much and welcome to this session. So, as you can see from the slide, that today we are going to talk about stylistics and its history and types. So, in our last lecture, we discussed a little bit of stylistics and its definitions and scopes. So, today we will elaborate on the history of the stylistics and also some of the types. And also, if time permits, then we'll also discuss the levels of stylistics. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Now, as you can see, the genesis of stylistics. The term stylistics is from, it was derived from the German word stylistic and French stylistique. Pronunciation same, but you can see the spelling is different. So it's derived from the word style. So stylistics is a recent development in an attempt to study style, though it's like human shadow, seems to be with man for centuries. So actually, we are dealing with the stylistics. As you can see, it says that like human shadow seems to be with man for centuries. That means just like the history of humanity, or history of human beings, if you say, or history of man. So the stylistics at the same age, or because with the man, when he came to existence as a being, as you can see, we started this very thing, style, because there is a term we call it a style is the man. So whatever a man says or whatever a man does, or his behavior, his attitude, the way he dresses up, you can say all these things together, actually, it makes a man. And therefore we call it that style and man, actually, they're inseparable. And that's why it says that just like human shadow, for centuries, actually, we are practicing stylistics. And let's move on to the next slide. So the stylistics is a 20th century phenomenon. It started since the 18th century, during which period classical works were the models. It came after the study of elocution in classical rhetoric. It gained prominence and became established in the 1960s in Britain and America. So as a subject or as a field of study, it gained prominence or popularity, as you can see, in 1960s in UK and in USA. So, and in the 18th century, you can see in which period classical works were the model. So, the rise of the classicism that we can see in the 18th century. And from there, we can see that stylistics, actually, it started its evolution. And in the 20th century, we can see stylistics as a subject. And elocution and in classical rhetoric, it means that it came after the study of elocution in classical rhetoric. Elocution, actually, it means the study of speech, you can say, in relation to our pronunciation, the grammar, intonations that we call, you could say, accent or inflection. So all these things together, we can say elocution. That means it will study the speech and all the grammar that is related to this speech, or the style or mechanisms that are related to this speech. So in the elocution, actually, we started this. It's a part of the rhetoric. And as we can see that since the development of the rhetoric as a subject, or the art of speech that we can say, from then, after that, actually, we can see that stylistics, it also gained some prominence. And in 1960s, as you can see, the predominance or dominance of stylistics in Britain and America. Now, it has also expanded in continental Europe, particularly France, due to the contribution of Charles Bailey and Louis Spitzer. Charles Bailey, a student of Ferdinand de Saussure, another famous linguist and also philosopher, Ferdinand de Saussure, and his student was Charles Bailey, and he contributed to the development of stylistics very significantly. And he wrote a monumental piece of work on French stylistics, which brought about widespread knowledge to the continent on the viable nature of stylistics as a researchable area of linguistics. So we can do research. And when he actually talked about in 1909, when he talked about French stylistics in his phenomenal piece of work or in his paper, from there, we came to know about stylistics as a subject, or in nature, there is something called stylistics, and that we can do research, with it in the area of linguistics. That means we can use linguistics to study different sorts of literary texts that we also discussed in our last lecture. That as A.G. Widdowson, actually, he said that stylistics means that it's the study of literature with the orientation of linguistics, or with the help of linguistics. Briefly, if we just rephrase his, quotation, or his, the way actually he talked about, stylistics in this way. So we can rephrase it in this way. That means the study of literature with the help of linguistics, or with the orientation of the linguistics, we can say. Now, on the other hand, Lewis Spitzer's approach to style was known as expressive stylistics, and was concerned with the positive relationship between the stylistic features of a text and the author's psychological mood. So here we can see expressive stylistics, that means it actually gave emphasis on the expression of the authors. And as you can see, the author's psychological mood, which was also important, and it was brought under consideration while analyzing or interpreting a text, and relationship between the stylistic features of a text. That means you can say the literary features, or stylistic features, or you can say linguistic features that we try to find out in the text, and also the author's psychological mood. That means how the author actually, he or she, thought about his or her work, or the way actually they express their ideas through their works. So that is also considered when interpreting a text. The term stylistics is a contested one. Contested one, actually, it means that if you can recall that in the last lecture, or in our last discussion, we said that stylistics is something which is interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary. It's not only the linguistics or the literature. There are other fields of study. Studies actually also, sometimes we can see that we can use those to interpret a text. So that's why, as a term, stylistic, it is contested. So different individuals and group of linguists, literary critics, anthropologists, psychologists argue on the definition of the term. So different, you can say, critique, or different people, different academicians from different fields, they defined stylistics from their own perspectives. So stylistics is simply defined as the study of styles, which is true. In Bangla, we call it shoili, the writing style of someone, or some writers, or a writer. This implies that a style is central to the study of stylistics. In his definition of stylistics, Tom MacArthur says, it is the branch of linguistics that studies style, especially in works of literature, and which is true, because we can see that see the echo of A.G. Widdowson's definition. Same thing, actually, he said it, but in a different way, maybe. But both of them actually, they express it in the same thing. For example, again, we can read it: the branch of linguistics that studies style, especially in works of literature. So we will use linguistics to study works of literature. In the same vein, Chapman, cited in Fouquet, defines stylistics as the linguistic study of different styles. That means the linguistic study of different styles means different types of writing, different styles of writing, and different writers. But we'll use linguistics to study those. The same idea is also shared by Turner, who states that stylistics is that part of his linguistics which concentrates on variation in the use of language, often but not exclusively, with a special attention to the most conscious and complex use of language in literature. So you see, the complex use of language in literature, it is the main focus, as you can see in the stylistics. Stylistics is simply defined as the study of styles. This implies that sorry, let me, yeah, here. So in another way, you can see, now here it says that Suji, he said that who shares the same view, opines that linguistics makes a taxonomy analysis of how language works, while stylistic analysis, on the other hand, examines how linguistic devices are used to portray and reinforce the meaning of a text. As you can see, the term taxonomic, it means that in a plain English, we can say taxonomy means the science of classification. So you see, we divide or reclassify different things, like especially in linguistics, we can see that taxonomic analysis of how language works. Like we try to classify different kinds of, syntactic structures, or even you can see the morphology, where actually we try to classify different sorts of words based on their derivatives and other things and inflections, like bound morpheme, free morpheme, in this way. So we try to classify words like content word, lexical word in different ways, or functional words, something like that. Also, we have semantics, we have pragmatics, we have syntax, where we try to classify on the basis of different kinds of grammatical, based on the grammatical aspects or different other linguistic aspects. So that's why it is based on classification. So taxonomic analysis of language that is done in linguistics. But in a stylistic analysis, on the other hand, it is done that we examine how those linguistic devices that we found in the linguistics, how those are used to portray and reinforce the meaning of a text. So we will take a literary text, or I also showed it that in the last lecture, that there are other texts that also can be considered for a stylistic analysis or interpretation, like advertisements, like newspapers, journals, and different other sorts of writings, that we can also brought them under the under this umbrella of stylistics. So we can also interpret them with the use of stylistics. So as you can see, that we use different kinds of linguistic devices to portray or reinforce the meaning of a text. That means if we try to understand the meaning, or if we try to manifest it, that how this meaning actually it has been devised in the text. So for that, we'll use linguistics. And then when we use linguistics to analyze literary text, we call it stylistics. Now, even, you see, Leach and Short believe that a stylistic study is the application of linguistic knowledge to the study of style. So these are more or less, you can see, different writers, different critics and linguists, they actually define stylistics in this way. Now, I will skip some of the slides. Okay. Now, from here, so I guess that you have some ideas about the stylistics, right? So do you have any confusion, dear students, that how stylistics actually it evolved, and the basic definitions or basic ideas about the stylistics? So is it clear to you? Do you have any confusion?
No, sir. It's clear, sir.
Okay, fantastic. Now let's talk about the types of stylistics. So there are different types of stylistics. Let's see. Now, as in the slide, actually, it says that stylistics as a serious multidisciplinary attempt to study style, and as a field that attracts increased interest in its study, is categorized into different groups by different scholars. So different scholars, they actually categorize or classify the stylistics in different ways. So generally, there are three divisions of stylistics around which the schools of stylistics are established. These are linguistic stylistics, literary stylistics, and pedagogical stylistics. I think that you can guess that what is linguistic stylistic. That means we will use different kinds of linguistic theories or devices to understand a literary work or any sort of work. Literary stylistics is based on different kinds of rhetoric, prosody, or figures of speech, and different other literary devices. So when you use this, then we call it literary stylistics. And pedagogical, actually, it's related with the art of teaching, or the way we teach language. So it's more or less, you can see, you can find some sort of connection between linguistic stylistics and pedagogical stylistics. So some of the theories, some of the ideas, actually they will overlap when we want to talk about linguistic stylistics and pedagogical stylistics. More or less, actually, all these three, I mean, you can say the three divisions of stylistics, they are interconnected. Now, however, the first scholar that seems to divide stylistics into different groups is Quiraud, who argues that present-day stylistics is categorized into two antagonistic schools. These are the traditional stylistics and the new stylistics. So he says that two antagonistic schools, that means some sort of enmity, you can say, exists between these two. So traditional stylistics, actually, they don't want to embrace new stylistics, and new stylistics, actually, they don't want to accept traditional stylistics while interpreting a text. So some sort of competition was there. The former originates with Charles Bailey, a disciple of Ferdinand de Saussure, while the latter with Roman Jakobson's drive from Prague School of Structuralism. So you see, the Ferdinand de Saussure, I believe that you can recall from your study of different kinds of theories of linguistics, and also while actually we were discussing literary theories and criticism, there actually we've came to know about the structuralism, and there we saw that how Ferdinand de Saussure, he was one of the proponents of this structuralism. So Roman Jakobson, actually, he is also a part of this these theories, or structuralism. So as you can see, Prague School of Structuralism, they are called. So however, there is a contrary view on the division of stylistics into schools. So different kinds of schools, like traditional stylistics, new stylistics, so they were competing against each other. So it is a very common phenomenon, especially different schools of thought. Sometimes they feel some sort of enmity or antagonism against each other, and which is very common in the scholarship, in the academia. Now, to Taylor, he said that it is perhaps unwise, if not uncommon, to speak of schools of stylistics. Few statisticians agree on a theoretical definition of the term style, and fewer is still on the correct methods of stylistic analysis. This is probably due to the composite nature of concept of style, and amalgam of psychological, sociological, literary, and linguistic notions, which are both commonsensical and theoretical. Now, let's try to understand it, and we can break it down in different parts, so it will be easy for us to understand this whole thing, this quotation. So it is perhaps unwise, if not uncommon, to speak of schools of stylistics. So, if you want to talk about different schools of stylistics, he says that this won't be a that much, good thing, because few statisticians agree on a theoretical definition of the term. So some people, actually, some statisticians, they depend on the term, on the definition, theoretical definition. They depend on the theory. So they believe in the theories of style. And fear is still on the correct methods of stylistic analysis. And why actually it is happening that the composite nature of the concept of style. So composite nature of concept of style means it's very, you can say, it's a mixture of many things. As we have already mentioned that it is multidisciplinary. So that's actually, it is picking different theories and different devices from different fields of study or knowledge. So that's why it is explained in the later part of the sentence. It says that an amalgam of psychological. Amalgam means it's a mixture. It's a kind of combination of psychological, sociological, literary, and linguistic notions. So all these fields of knowledge together, actually, they will help us to understand or to create a statistics, to understand a statistics, or to interpret a text. So which are both commonsensical and theoretical. So sometimes you have to use your common sense to understand this, and sometimes you have to use theory to analyze the text if you want to practice the statistics. So common sense and theory, all the things together, it will work to understand the statistics. Now, the major categorizations include, the first one is social linguistics stylistics. Those actually who have a little bit of exposure to the social linguistics or linguistics from the broader perspective, if I want to say. So you know what is social linguistics. That means the study of language from the perspective of the society or in relation to the society when you try to understand linguistics. So social linguistic stylistics based on social linguistics. So in his effort to explain the notion of social linguistic stylistics, Martin Joos, he states that the social occasion and its adequate style are dynamically correlated. Of course, in one direction of this correlation, the speaker uses the style that suits the occasion. In the other direction, the speaker defines the occasion for the listener and for himself by his choice of style. And this is a very interesting kind of, you can say, approach to the stylistics, I must say. And it's based on society, it's based on social occasions. The context is, social context. So the social occasion and its adequate style are dynamically correlated. So you can see style and social occasions, they're interconnected. Okay. And this connection or this correlation is very dynamic. It is not something static. It's a flux. It's always changing, evolving. Okay. Do you get it, dear students?
Yes, sir.
So social context and a style. So they're interrelated and they're dynamic. Okay. And of course, in one direction of this correlation, that means this correlation, these interconnectedness, when you say that. So at one point, you can say, and we do it every day. So just you put yourself in this situation and in this phenomenon, then it will help you to understand it. The speaker uses the style that suits the occasion. For example, if we take speech as a text, from the discourse perspective, then you can see that sometimes we are requested to give a speech on different occasions. For example, in national different occasions like Independence Day, Victory Day, and sometimes even on wedding ceremony, or if you are attending any kind of ceremonies or any kind of occasions. So if you're requested to give a speech, so you see, on the basis of the occasion or in considering the context that which occasion you are participating in, based on that, your speech will be different, right?
Yes, sir.
The speech that you will give on the International Mother Language Day, I hope that you'll not give the same speech on the Victory Day or Independence Day, but because it will vary, right?
Yes, sir.
Because the context is different, so that's why you'll also change your style, change your diction, your speech style. So occasion matters. So that is one thing. And sometimes the other way around, if you consider, the speaker defines the occasion for the listener and for himself also, and by his choice of his style. And sometimes through the choice of his style, we define that now I am in this context, and from my style, you can feel it. That means I will choose this style, and through my style, through my speech, I will say, or I'll try to explain that, okay, dear audience, I'm talking about Independence Day. I'm giving a speech, on International Mother Language Day. So through your style, we'll be able to understand that what is the occasion. Sometimes the occasion will determine the style, and sometimes through a style, we will determine what is the occasion. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So that is socio-linguistic stylistics. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Great. So this explains that the theory is partially based on the concept of choice. It is also partially based on the interest of the socio-linguistic and varying communicative situations. So in different communicative situations, so either you will choose the occasion or you will choose the style. So which result from varying factors like setting, topic, participants. So what is the setting? That means the place or the time where actually you are giving the speech, or where actually, or for which occasion you are writing. That is the thing. And also, what is the topic on which actually you're writing? So depending on the topic, your style also will be changed. For example, on national occasion, you will write a different way. Or if you want to celebrate the birthday of a famous writer, so you will write in a different way. So topic will also determine your style. And participants, of course, for example, if you are delivering a lecture, if you're writing something for the kids, for the children, so you will write in a different way. And if you write on the same topic for some adults or for some seniors, so because the participants are different, so your language or style will also be different, right?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
So this is called social linguistic stylistics. Okay, now let me move on to the next one, pedagogical stylistics. Okay, at the very beginning of today's lecture, we actually we said this term, or we mentioned this term, that is pedagogical stylistics. Now, let's see what is pedagogy. Pedagogy is the practice of teaching. I told you that it is a study of teaching or practice of teaching, or the study of teaching. While stylistics is used as a tool in explaining English as a foreign language, or EFL, and English as a second language, that is ESL, then it is known as pedagogical stylistics. This is very interesting. You see, in the EFL, or English as a foreign language situation, or English as a second language situation, in both this context, when we use the stylistic, then we call it pedagogical stylistic, because our purpose is to teach, to use different literary texts to teach the students. So then we will call it pedagogical stylistics. And the situation might be EFL, English as a foreign language, or maybe English as a second language. Now, stylistics can serve, A.G. Whitson, he explains that stylistics can serve as a means whereby literature and language as subjects can, by a process of gradual approximation, move towards both linguistics and literary criticism, and also a means whereby these disciplines can be pedagogically treated to yield different subjects. To yield different subjects, thus the statistics can, I suggest, provide for the progression of a pupil for either language or literature towards either literary criticism or linguistics. So you see, in this paragraph, actually, you can say that Buddhism epitomized the whole thing. Actually, he encapsulated the whole idea of pedagogical stylistics. So if I explain it to you in this way, that stylistics can serve as a means whereby literature and language as subjects can, by a process of gradual approximation. I hope that you understand the idea of approximation. That means when you put something together, or if something is very close to each other. Okay. For example, literature and language, when they're put side by side and they're very close, okay, and you mix them together, okay,
Yes, sir.
and then that means you are taking subject from literature, and also you're taking a little bit from language, and then you move towards linguistics for language, and for literature you're moving to literary criticism, okay, and then you're
Yes,
putting
sir.
them both linguistics and literary criticism, you put them together to interpret the text. And then also a means whereby these disciplines means linguistics and literature, these two disciplines, okay, literature and language, these disciplines can be pedagogically treated to yield different subjects. So if you want to teach language, or if you want to teach literature, then you can put them together, both these linguistics and literary criticism, to teach the students about literature or about linguistics, or both of these together, about literature and linguistics, simultaneously, if you want to teach them. So thus the statistics can, I suggest, that means he's saying that, Buddhism says, I suggest, provide for the progression of a pupil. That means it helps a student. In which way it helps? Let's say from either language or literature towards either literary criticism or linguistics. So it will help a student that he can go for the literary criticism, or he can go for linguistics. So through the use of these, we can teach students both literature and linguistics. So when actually we have this combination, these two disciplines, when we put them together, when they're in a process of gradual approximation, then this whole process we'll call that pedagogical stylistics. Okay. Now, pedagogical stylistics has at least two facets. One embraces the pedagogical usefulness and potential of stylistics for teaching. So if you're a teacher, if you want to teach literature, then you can take recourse to pedagogical stylistics, and then you use that technique to teach your students about literature, but at the same time, you're also teaching them language. Do you get it now, what I'm saying? Especially pedagogical stylistics, it is used by the teachers. So in future, when you will be teachers of school or universities or colleges, then you can use these pedagogical stylistics to teach your students both literature and language. Okay?
Okay.
All right. The other includes the role of stylistics in L1, that means our first language, mother tongue, and the L2 pedagogies, that is the teaching of English language through literature. So this is the thing, that there is a subject, we call it teaching language through literature, especially in ELT, or English language teaching, or applied linguistics. We have this subject that we call, or even in TESOL, we also teach this course that we call teaching language through literature. That means in the language classroom, we will use poems, novels, or short stories, or different other, pieces from different genres of literature. So we'll use them as materials, and we will use them in the class to teach students language through these, literary pieces. Understood? For example, you can use a poem in the class, and then you can ask your students to find the unknown vocabulary, or to find the rhyme and rhythm, to find the different kinds of syntactical stuff or sentence structures, or to you can also ask them to find out different kinds of connotative meaning and denotative meaning. So you see, you're using poem, any literary piece from literature, you're using this thing, but you're using it in the language classroom to teach students language. Okay? Now, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So when we do it, that we call pedagogical stylistics. Okay, dear students?
Okay, sir.
Now, as you can see, practical stylistics. One important assumption of stylistics is that in interpreting literary text, knowledge of language is a useful basis. That means we must have some idea or knowledge about language, and this is very important to interpret any literary text. This is viewed by the term practical stylistics. So we call it practical stylistics. That means when you have the practical sense of language, that means you can, it's not only the theory that you know, but you can also utilize or use those theories in practice. So we call it practical stylistics. So in his attempt to bring to limelight the notion of practical stylistics, Carter, he states that it is a process of literary text analysis which primarily interpretive procedures used in the reading of a literary text are linguistic procedures. So you see, a process of literary text analysis which primary interpretive procedures used in reading of a literary text are linguistic procedures. So as you can see, we are using different kinds of we are trying to analyze the literary text and primary interpretive procedures. We are following some process, primary process, but we are using different kinds of linguistic procedures to understand the text. That means you have the sense of, you have the linguistic competence. That means it's not only that you know the rules, but at the same time, you can also apply them. So practical stylistics is that when you use practically and you try to analyze the text. The above explains, that means the thing that already we have already seen in the previous slide, that the above explains that in reading literary text, readers are first of all involved in a response to language. That means as a reader, all of us, when we read a text, whatever the linguistic competence that we have, or the idea about language or theories of language that we know, so unconsciously or subconsciously, actually, we respond to the text. So we try to make some meaning in our brain, whatever we can, whether it is a very familiar text or unfamiliar text, it doesn't matter. But when you read a text, we get ourselves involved and we have our own response to language. This means that the theory welcomes the relevance of linguistic approaches to literary discourse analysis. So here actually we can find the relevance, or we can find the appropriateness of the linguistic approach to literary discourse analysis. So when you want to analyze a literature or literary piece of work, then we are using different kinds of linguistic approach. We are following this, we're having this, and then with the help of this, practically, we are analyzing a text. It also requires that interpretation or analysis of a text be done within both linguistic and literary angles. So you must have some idea about the literary angles, means literary criticism, literary stuff, figures of speech, rhetoric, and prosody. So you must have some ideas about it. At the same time, you must have some idea about linguistics. So on the other hand, the exponents of this theory see the relevance of Roman Jakobson's opinion that the structuralist, Roman Jakobson's, what he says, that if there are some critics who still doubt the competence of linguistics, that I've already mentioned that the linguistic competence is very important. And he's saying that if there are any critics who still have the doubt about the competence of linguistics to embrace the field of poetics, I privately believe that the poetic incompetence of some bigoted linguists has been mistaken for an inadequacy of the linguistic science itself. All of us here, however, definitely realize that a linguistic deaf to the poetic function of language, and a literary scholar indifferent to linguistic problems and unconversant with linguistic methods are equally flagrant anachronisms. It's a very strong definition, a strong idea. So I will just try to simplify you so that you can get it. He's saying that there are some linguists, actually, they don't want to embrace any literary theories or other stuff. So they don't like them. Okay. They have some sort of dislikings for those. And there are some literary or, critique, those who are only focusing on literature or literary criticisms. They don't bother about linguistics. So in both ways, both these parties, those who don't count the literary criticism, literary theories, or literariness of the text, and on the other hand, those who doesn't care about the linguistic theories, he's saying that both the parties actually they are to be blamed. And he's saying that equally flagrant anachronisms. That means you'll not find any kind of synchronicity among these people. So they will not synchronize. So they will not come to one point. They will, that those who only prefer the linguistic things and those who only prefer the literary stuff. So actually, the way actually they will interpret the text, that will be inadequate. That won't be enough. So that's why he's saying that the linguistic competence, all of us actually as the literary critiques, we have to embrace it. We must be conversant with different kinds of linguistic methods. It's very important to analyze, to interpret texts. Do you get it, dear students? If you're not clear, I can repeat it or I can simplify it in different ways. Yeah, please.
It will be helpful for us if you repeat again, sir.
Okay. For example, I only prefer linguistics, okay? Because I had my master's, for example, in English language teaching or applied linguistics. And for example, Shahadat, you have your major in literature. So you prefer only literary theories, okay?
Yes, sir.
But you don't know or you don't want to know about linguistics or linguistic competence. So you don't prefer it and you don't care about it. So Roman Jakobson, he's saying that it is a grave mistake. We shouldn't have this kind of belief. That means as a critic, I must have some sort of ideas about the both. In that case, that will facilitate us to analyze a text more efficiently if you have the knowledge of linguistics and also if you have the knowledge of literature. Okay? Now, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now, the next one is structural stylistics. Structuralism started in Paris in the early 1960s. The pioneer proponent was said to the Ronald Barthes. In his effort to explain the theory of structural stylistics, now the Taylor opines that the discipline of structural stylistics, as it appears in the writing of Charles Bailey and Michael Raffater, Roman Jacobson, who referred to the discipline as poetics and the generative stylisticians, arose in order to explain certain common sense intuitions about verbal communication that are not explicable. So thus the theory developed from the attempt to apply to analyze of text the transformational generative grammar model. The models under this school include generative stylistics and the systematic stylistics. So you see, as you know, the structuralist stylisticians or structuralism itself, actually it depended on the structure of the sentence. So it tried to establish some structure, though we can see that sometimes these the relationship in the structure, actually we can find the signifier, we can find the signified, and therefore we can find the sign. So this whole process of signification, they say that it's to some extent, sometimes they're arbitrary in most cases. Okay, but at the end of the day, we always try to find out some basic structure, some fundamental structure. So the whole thing that we can see around us, that follows some specific structures. And we know some basic structures, we have some basic structures, but later on we can generate many other structures using those foundations, using those fundamental structures. So that's actually, you can see that that's the theory developed from the attempt to apply to the analysis of text. So they try to analyze the text based on the basis of the different kinds of structures. That's we also call it transformational generative grammar model. And Noam Chomsky, you know that he also contributed to the development of this transformative generative grammar model. So the models under this school include also generative stylistics and the systematic stylistics. So you can see systematic. So it's all about system. It's all about sign. So the stylistics actually is based on the fixed structures that, as we can see, the proposed by Ronald Barthes, Roman Jacobson, Charles Bailey. So all these people. The next one is affective or reader-centered stylistics. Affective or reader-centered stylistics. From the very word affective, you can feel that when you read something and when you get affected by it, influenced by it. So as a reader, you have the liberty to analyze the text in your own way. That's why we're calling it reader-centered stylistics. In literary criticism, I believe that you can recall the reader response theory. So there actually we could see that how reader actually, he or she is responsible to create a meaning or to infuse meaning in the text. So here also we can see that the main concern of this theory is to account for the varieties of the reader's response to the language of the text. So different texts are interpreted by different readers from different angles, different perspectives. So affective or reader-centered stylistics actually will take all these things together and they will interpret the text. So it gives emphasis or it gives importance to the understanding of the reader. So as a reader, the way I think, as a reader, the way you think, as reader, the way you think. So all these things are very important in the reader-centered stylistics. So as you can see, Michael here states that the object of the analysis of a style is the illusion that the text creates the mind of the reader. So the object of the analysis of a style. So you see that in these stylistics, I mean, the thing is that the mind of the reader, as if the text actually it created the mind of the reader. That means when the reader read the text, they got affected by the text itself, and then they will interpret it from their own understanding, from their own perspective. So that we will call reader-centered stylistics. Clear? Have you got it, dear students?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Now, here, then he says that his belief is that the concern of stylistics must be that the message should be seen as an impression which is subjectively established in the mind of the addressee instead of being an objective reality, and which is true. For example, Shahadat or Nahida or Aisha, so any one of us actually, if we read a text, for example, a poem by T.S. Eliot. So if you take the text, for example, the love song of the Jalfet Perform by T.S. Eliot, if you take that text, you can see somebody, they will give it a reading from the very modern perspective. So they will find modernism. Somebody will try to establish kind of postmodern reading out of it. So you see, different readers, they have their different opinions about particular work. So that's why it's very subjective. It's very personal. It is not objective reality. So what is true for you, that might not be true for me. So I may have a different understanding, you will have a different understanding. Okay. So the proponents of this theory believe that literary style emerges out of the writer's desire so as to surmount the difficulties faced by the reader in the communication of the writer's message. So he's saying that this literary style actually, it comes out of the writers actually, he has some desire to create some specific meaning, and he tries to infuse that meaning into his text, in his writing, and he wants his reader to be influenced by it. So readers, when they read it, they actually they get influenced by the text, the meaning that is generated or created by the writer, and thus the difficulty faced by the reader, that means the message that is there in the text and the message that is received by the readers. So actually he says that these sort of stylistic, that will minimize that sort of difficulty of understanding or analysis or interpretation. So as you can see, actually he further maintains that, Michael, he says that the communication function of a message is determined by the reader's response. So the whole thing actually, it is focused on the reader, the way the reader actually, he or she responds to the text, the way actually he or she analyze it, that is very important here. So that's actually, we are calling it affective or reader-centered stylistics. Okay, now let's move on to the next one, that is speech acts or expressive stylistics. Speech acts or expressive stylistics. So speech acts, those actually who studied pragmatics or discourse analysis, I believe that you are a little bit of familiar with this idea, that is a speech act theory. As you can see that the idea of speech acts stylistics rests on John R. Searle's hypothesis. According to him, if the basic unit of communication, that means the speech act, for example, the thing that I'm talking right now, the thing that I'm delivering. So whatever actually I'm saying, that itself actually, you can call it, this is a speech. And you see, I'm acting upon it. I'm working on it. So that's actually the whole process is called, so some sort of dynamism is there. That's why we're calling it speech act. So it is considered, the unit of communication is considered along with the principle of expressibility, the way actually you can express it. So a series of analytic connections would be discovered between the notion of speech acts, what the speaker means, what the sentence or the other structure unit uttered means, what the speaker intends, what the hearer understands, and what the rules governing the linguistic elements are. So you see, in the speech acts, what are the things actually we are focusing on? As you can see it, what the speaker means, that means the intention of the speaker. So for example, the speaker or the writer, in what way actually say it? So when I give a speech, so I'm a speaker. So right now I'm giving a speech. So what I intend, what I desire, what I mean by that. Okay, so that is the one thing in the speech act. It's a part of the speech act. Then what the sentence or the structure unit uttered means, that means the sentence structure, what does it say? Then what the speaker intends. So one is what the speaker means through the text, and then what is his intention here in this speech, and what the hearer understands. That means as listeners, what we understand by it. That means the speaker means something, he intends something, he intends to. But as hearers or as listeners, we also understand in our own way. And what the rules governing the linguistic elements are. And in between, what are the rules are there that actually it will help us to understand or to intend or to mean as speakers. Okay. So this speaks acts, if you take it in this way, and when you put any text, I mean, within this framework, then you can analyze it. So that's what we call it expressive stylistics. That means the expression of the writer or the speaker and the expression of the readers. So both of these are important here. And at the same time, in between, we'll have some rules, linguistic elements we have to consider to interpret, to analyze the text. Clear, dear students? Do you follow me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Now, the main focus of the stylistics is on the execution and correlation of the message and the expression. So the execution and correlation of the message, that means the way actually you deliver the speech, that is the execution, and the correlation of the message. So that means the connection that you have within, or the coherence or cohesion that actually you can establish within your message and the expression. So the correlation of the message and the expression, that means the message that is delivered by the speaker and the expression, the way actually he expresses it, that means the meaning and intention, and also the way actually he executed the whole process using some rules. So this is the focus of these stylistics. And what is important to the speech act theory is the expressibility principle, which shows that whatever can be meant can at the same time be said, and that usually we mean more than we actually say. This is very interesting. Just try to understand it, that it says that which shows that whatever can be meant can at the same time be said. That means you mean something and you say it. So we can do it. An everyday conversation, I mean, we are doing it with our interlocutor. So when you talk to someone, so we are doing it every day. So I mean something and I say it, right? For example, you're saying something about your friend. So you mean it and therefore you say it. So you can do it same time. And sometimes we say that, look, I said it, but actually I didn't mean it. Don't we say that? For
Yes,
example,
sir.
at the heat of the moment when you're angry, so you say something, then later you say that, trust me, actually
Yes, sir.
I was angry, that's why I said it, but I didn't mean it. So we
Yes,
can
sir.
do the same. We can say and we can mean, or we can say we cannot mean that thing. But here in the speech act theory, we are also calling it expressive. That means our expression will be interpreted. So it's based on our expression. So we mean at the same time that can be said, and that usually we mean more than we actually say. So this is the, you can say, the third layer of our speech, you can say. So sometimes what we mean that we say, and what we already said, there are more meaning beneath that, more of it. That means I haven't expressed it in my speech, but if you delve into my speech or the text, then you can find more meaning into that. Do you get my point, what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
I
sir.
said what I meant, or what I meant that I said, and at the same time, there are more out of it that you can get more out of it, more meaning out of it. So these are the things. So that's actually, it's called speech acts, expressive stylistics. You see, it's some sort of action. It's very dynamic. Now, the next one is code-centered or objective stylistics. Code. Code means language. Code means structures, right? Units. We can feel it. Then what does it mean, code? So code-centered or objective stylistics. That means it's not subjective. You see the reader-centered stylistics, that is pretty subjective, right? Because whatever the reader thinks, that is important. So that is very subjective. But here actually we're talking about objective stylistics. This form of stylistics deals with the language structure and its component units. Language structures and its component units. That means code, the language structures. For example, I'm just giving you one example, very plain examples, like, for example, the very simple, the very common or the basic sentence structure, like subject, verb, object, plus complement or extension, whatever you say. So you see that this is the structure, and here subject is a code, object is a code, complement is a code, and its component units. So there are other things that we can divide it. We can have different kinds of subjects. We can have different kinds of objects. So you can divide it. You can classify it in more units. So all these are units of language. So applying the model means investigation and classification of the particular selection and combination of language units. So you can use morphology, you can use any other linguistic devices to analyze the text, any kind of code. And therefore, when you use any specific code to analyze the text, for example, if I use different kinds of social linguistic or psycholinguistic theories, and the psycholinguistic theories, more or less, most of the theories, they're common and they're fixed, right? If Shahrear used that, Shahrear used one code or one structure, one theory from psycholinguistics, and I'm also using the same theory or same code to analyze the text. So in most cases, actually, it will be same, right? Because we're using the same theories, same codes.
Yes, sir.
You get my point?
Yes, sir.
So in that sense, actually, I cannot be subjective. That is, I don't have any, that much control to, interpret the meaning, because I'm using certain rules, and or the base of rules. If you interpret it using the same rules, in most cases, the meaning will be the same. The interpretation or analysis will be the same. So that's why it is subjective. It is not something personal. Is it clear, dear students?
Yes, sir.
So it is objective kind of stylistics. That's applying the model means investigation and classification of the particular selection. So you'll select some theories and combination of language units, and different kinds of language units you will use to interpret or analyze the text. Now we have functional stylistics. Functional means that you can use, that you can find some usage, practical uses there. Now the emergence of this model is the result of the controversy between the monists and dualists in their attempt to define the actual relationship between the content and the form. So it's a very interesting thing, that whether content is the thing or the form is the thing, whether content is important or only the form is important. So some say that content is important more than the form, and some say that no, form is more important than the content. So as you can see in the structuralism or new historicism or new criticism, there actually we can see that how form actually it was emphasized. Then later in the new the new criticism, there we can see that content was also given some importance there. So this is some sort of controversy between these, that content or the form. The monist belief is that the manner of expression or matter or content are like the body and soul. So the monist group, they believe that content is important, very important, because that is the matter, that is the expression. And like body and soul, for example, the combination between the body and soul, just like that is the content. And the change in form means, that means if you change the form, it changes in the content. So you can see that they're interconnected. So if you change the form, the content will be different. If the content isn't changed, the content will remain same. So content actually depends on the form. So this idea is also shared and supported by new critics that I've already mentioned, that the new criticism after the new historicism or Russian formalism, you can say. Actually, it is Russian formalism. So Russian formalism, actually, it only emphasized on the form. But the new critics, it's the American version of the Russian formalism, you can say. So they actually, emphasized on both the meaning, both the content and the form. So consistently asked that there was no distinction between form and content. So they say that form and content, you cannot, they're not inseparable. So you cannot make any specific distinction between the form and content. So the text cannot be understood as ideas wrapped in emotions or meanings decorated with imagery. So you cannot only get the text based on the content, or you can only get the meaning of the text only based on the structure or the form. So you have to put them together to get the real meaning or the real idea about the text. So on the other end, dualist, what do they think? So monists, actually, they gave importance both the content and the form, but the dualists believe that the style involves choices of manner or expression, so rather than matter or content. So they actually put emphasis on the manner, that means the form. So they were not giving emphasis on the matter or the content. So hence language performs various functions, and any piece of language is likely to be the result of choices made on varying functional levels. So in different occasion, you will choose different form, different style. So that's why actually it is called functional levels. Got it? dear students.
Yes, sir.
Based on the context, you will choose the style. So that's why, and that means you will choose certain form, that how actually you're going to deliver the speech, or how actually you're going to write it. So when you determine it in that way, so that we call it functional level. That means based on the context, you will determine the function of the text. Therefore, actually, you interpret it accordingly. So our language is assigned different functions by different functionalists. So different one, actually, they consider in different way. For example, as you can see, the scholars, actually, they are including different kinds of language function, or talking about different kinds of language function. Like I. Richards, a very famous critic, he says that functions are sense, feeling, tone, and intention. So he's saying that sense, that means our senses, five senses that you're using. Feeling, actually, it is related with your heart, with your mental faculty. On the other hand, sense is related with your, say, perception, or the organs that you use to perceive something. And therefore, also you have tone. That means in your writing, you have a tone. You know, when you say something in your voice, you have a tone, the way you say it. And also, what do you intend? What do you try to make us understand, the audience, through this? That means your obhipray, in Bengali we call it your, or you can say uddesho, intention. What do you want to say by it? All right. Then R. Jacobson's, here's also referential. It's emotive. It is connotative. It's phatic. It's poetic. It's metalinguistic. So you see all these things together. Actually, we can find it's a part of the form, and therefore, actually, it will establish some sort of functions of the language, and accordingly, we will interpret it. It's referential. That means it's based on one thing. That means you will refer one thing with another thing. So based on that reference, you will try to interpret it. That means something, it's some sort of comparative study, you can do it. So referential, so you can refer it, you can find the meaning out of it. Emotive, that means it's related with your emotion. Connotative, it's similarly like that. I mean, it's not only the denotative meaning, it's something more than that, beyond the dictionary meaning or scientific meaning. It's more than that. So layers of meaning, you'll get it from there. It's phatic, it's poetic, it's metalinguistic. That means beyond the language, it will give you more meaning, more ideas. So it's based on form. You see, Halliday's, he says that function are ideational, interpersonal, and textual. So ideational, interpersonal, and textual. Jacobson, he believes that the function of an utterance depends on its orientation to one or more of its six constitutive factors of this speech event. So they are giving different kinds of things. In our coming lectures, actually, we'll talk about this ideational, interpersonal, and textual stuff. It's there that when you interpret a text, how actually these things actually come into action, and they will be conducive to analyze the text, to interpret the text. Now, some functionalists identify the purely communicative style, so they will only go on the communicative style. That means it will communicate some meaning, so they will only give importance on it. So it's, again, you can see it's based on form. The technical style, that means the technique that you use. The aesthetic style, that means the beauty, or the science of beauty technique. So the way actually you try to beautify the text, the style of the text that you try to establish it. So the aesthetic style. And the persuasive or publicistic style, that means when you use a form to persuade, or to convince a certain audience about something. So that's actually persuasive or publicist style, arising from these various functions of language. So we have different functions of language. That means we use language, for example, in poetry, we use rhetoric, we use different kinds of figures of speech to beautify the language, right? To make it interesting, to make it strange. So that is an aesthetic style. And then we use different kinds of words, some emphatic words to convince the audience. So that is persuasive or publicistic style. So based on the functions, you will, change the style, change the form, and accordingly, we will interpret the text. So what distinguishes one style from another is the function or the aim envisaged by the author. That means the author will decide based on the context that what will be the function of this particular speech or the text. Okay, now let's see. Okay, now here we're almost done. So here you can say cognitive stylistics or cognitive poetics. Cognitive actually is related with your psychology, with your some sort of, It's with your your mentality, with your brain, that is related with the cognition or your ideas. So cognitive stylistics or cognitive poetics. Poetics means actually it means the stylistics, the art of writing or doing or saying something, that we call poetics. For example, Aristotle poetics. I hope that you can recall it from your graduate study, where actually we studied it in literary criticism. There we see that how actually Aristotle actually established the different kinds of styles or norms about tragedy, about comedy, about writings. Overall, if you say it. So despite cognitive stylistics, also known as cognitive poetics, having only relatively recently been embraced by mainstream stylists. So it's a very recent trend of stylistics. Okay? Neither. Do you get it?
Yes, sir.
It's a very recent style because it's not too old. It's a new one. Because the cognitive linguistics, that is also a very important field of study these days. So it's a very new field where actually on the basis of brain or you can say the cognition, we try to interpret the linguistics. Similarly, we will also use this cognitive process to analyze particular literary text. So recently been embraced by mainstream stylistics. So mainstream stylistics actually now they accept it. They use it to interpret or to analyze a text. So it has rapidly become an ever-expanding entrepreneurial and extremely productive brand. So it is very productive because people are using it. Critics are using it to analyze text. So at its most basic, a definition can compromise a single sentence. So you can comprise a single sentence. That means you can define it with the help of this single sentence. That what is this? What is cognitive poetics? So it says that cognitive poetics is all about reading literature. That means reading itself, that it's some sort of psychological process, isn't it? When we read, we have to use our brain, right?
Yes, sir.
To understand it. So that's why actually this cognitive means you have to use your brain to read literature. So when you use your cognition, then we call it cognitive poetics. That's why it's called it cognitive poetics. Is all about reading literature. You read literature, you get the idea, you use your brain, you form some concept, and also you develop some cognition, you improve your schema. That means your store of knowledge about something. You improve your memories, repertoire of something, or your atmosphere. You get information from there. So therefore, you can see the cognitive poetics is all about reading literature. You read, you learn, and you improve your schema. So on a more complex level, Stockwell expands it to that sentence looks simple to the point of seeming trivial. That means when you read a sentence, it looks very simple. You just read it and you get the idea. It could even be seen simply as a close repetition, since cognition is to do with the mental processes involved in reading. So as I said that, you have to use a brain. It is a mental process. Reading is a mental process mainly. So since cognition is to do with the mental process involved in reading, and poetics concerns the craft of literature. So you see the cognition is related with the mental process. That means you try to get the idea, you try to, structure the concept or form the concept. And poetics, that is the analysis that concern the craft of literature. That means the devices or the figures of speech or the things that, or the literary devices that we can find in the literature. So that is poetics. So poetics will provide us with this structural stuff, and cognition will help us with the mental process to understand the mental process. So it's to do with the mental process. So the combination of mental process and the poetics, that's why we call it cognitive poetics. So viewed from this perspective, cognitive poetics or stylistics highlights the aspects of reading that literature consumers operate when they process literary text. So whenever you start reading any novel or any short story or a story or any poem, then and there actually, as a consumer, as readers, we start operating, we start building your knowledge. So our cognition actually it starts working. Mental process already actually it is starting. So for example, when you're reading these slides from the screen, so you see you are the consumers and your brain is already actually having some mental process, and you're developing some sort of concept about these slides from your reading, right? So it is a whole mental process that you can see. The cognitive stylistics essentially has emanated from the application to literature of models originally used in disciplines such as cognitive linguistics, I have already mentioned, cognitive psychology, and artificial intelligence or AI. So you see, it's very scientific. So it itself is a science. And from these fields, actually, we have got the idea that we call cognitive poetics or cognitive stylistics. Okay. All right. I think it's enough for the day. So we have discussed different sorts of different types of styles, stylistics. If you have any confusion or if you have any comments, so you can leave it here right now, or you can ask me any questions. So do you have anything to say, dear students? And I will share these slides on your Google Classroom, so you don't need to worry about it. So it will, I'll make it available for you, so you can go through it. And after reading it, if you have any further questions, you can also ask me in the next class next week. So no problem with that. But still, from today's understanding, so if you have anything to say, so you can say it now. Dear students,
No,
are you with
sir.
me?
Thank
So was it clear? Was it clear? I mean, all the levels. So
Yes, sir.
I believe that actually you have some basic understanding of the different types of stylistics. So when you will read it by yourself from the stuff that the materials that I'm going to provide you. So from there, if you read it, then I believe that it will be easy for you to understand. But still, if you have any complexity or complications to understand, just let me know. So we can have a revision in the next class also.
No problem, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
All right. So thank you very much for your patience and hope to see you next week, inshallah.
Hello, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.